out the big gun that Sridhar saw was made of bronze. Have you anything seen made of bronze? What? Tribal people have been using bronze to make things since thousands of years. One wonders how they took out copper and tin from the deep mines, melted the metals and turned into beautiful things. तो श्रीधर ने नोटिस करा कि जो भी वो चीज़ उसने देखी वहाँ पे बिग गन कैनन, it was made of bronze. स्टूडेंट्स, हम अपने आसपास बहुत सारी ब्रॉन्ज की चीज़ें देखते हैं, जैसे लोटा, किचन में यूटेंसिल्स, कोई ऑर्नामेंट, कोई शो पीस, ये सब ब्रॉन्ज से बने हैं. वी हैव टू रियलाइज स्टूडेंट्स, ब्रॉन्ज हमारे लाइफ में बहुत सालों पहले डिस्कवर हो चुका है. ट्राइबल पीपल आज भी उसे यूज करते हैं टू कार्व एंड टू ऑब्टेन अ लॉट ऑफ देयर स्टफ. Find out from your elders about some of the things made from bronze that were or are still used in your house. From its color, time to identify which one of them is made of copper, brass and which from bronze. तो students, जैसे कि आप pictures में देख सकते हैं, difference in the color of copper, brass and bronze, you all must be able to identify a few patilas, lotas and other ornaments, sometimes jewelry also made of these metals. When there was no telephone, Didi asked us to wait at the king's palace. She herself went to Fateh Darwaza. A while later, we heard Didi's voice. Alert, I am Sultan Abul Hassan. I am very fond of music and Kuchipudi dance. We all laughed. We were surprised how Didi's voice could be heard from so far. She later told us that if you stand at Fateh Darwaza, whatever you speak can be heard at the king's palace. Isn't that amazing, student? So जैसे कि दीदी ने हमें करके दिखाया, अगर फतेह दरवाजे पे कोई खड़े हो और कुछ बोले तो आपकी आवाज़ इतनी ज़्यादा पहुंच जाती है कि वो सीधा किंग्स पैलेस तक जाती है. That is all a game of architecture here, students. Arrangements for water. The picture shown here is made after seeing a very old painting of these times. Can you think why bullocks have been used here? Use your hand movement to show in which direction the drum attached to the rod moves when the bullocks move. तो जब ये bullocks attached हैं, वो move करेंगे बच्चों, तो जो drum है वो clockwise यानी ऐसी direction में move करेगा. Use your hand to show the movement in which the direction drum attached to the rod moves when the bullocks move. Students, when the bullocks are attached to the drum, it would move in the anti-clockwise direction just like this. In which direction would the toothed tail wheel move? That is here that we have mentioned. It would move in the clockwise direction, that is opposite to our drum. Look, this pole shown under the ground joins with another wheel which has a number of pots in it. तो यहाँ पे ये एक और पोल से अटैच्ड है बच्चों, जिसके अंदर बहुत सारे pots हैं. Now imagine how would this garland of pots lift water from the wall. This garland of pots is all connected to our drum and toothed wheel. When we are moving our drum and toothed wheel, this all will be drained in water, and when reaching to the top of the canal, this all will drain the water. तो बच्चों, जैसे जैसे simultaneously हमारा bullocks, drum and toothed wheel move करेगा, वैसे ही हमारा ये pole and several buckets in it will move. Do you now get some idea about how the tanks could have been filled by lifting water from the wells? I think it would have been with the use of bullocks, just like how we saw. Even today, we can see clay pipes in the walls of the fort. These pipes would have been used to carry water to different places in the palace. तो जो clay pipes हैं बच्चों, हमने देखा यहाँ पर, जैसे हम देख सकते हैं, ये different जगहों पर पैलेस में पानी ले जाने के काम आते होंगे. Where else have you seen such wheels attached to each other? For example, in the gear of a cycle or somewhere else. I'm sure बच्चों आपने cycling movement बहुत सारी जगह देखी होगी. As I remember, we all must have seen sewing machine. उसके एक end पे एक wheel जैसी movement होती है. So one answer I have given for all of you. other examples you all are going to put here. Look around and find out how water is pumped from the ground to higher places. तो बच्चों, जैसे कि हमने यहाँ देखा कि हम एक चीज़ की मूवमेंट कराते हैं तो दूसरी चीज़ जो है वाटर के अंदर ड्रेन होती है और बाहर आती है and it fills up our canal or tank whatsoever. As we also discussed in our chapter in water and saw a practical experiment of well, we could see how by rotating the wheel and the axle, we could send the bucket in, bring it up, and we can fetch water like that. How is water pumped by using electricity? How is water lifted without electricity? Students, without electricity, we just discussed by the formation of a traditional well. Whereas जब हम electricity की बात करें बच्चों, तो it is done with the help of an electric motor. तो बच्चों, एक इलेक्ट्रिक मोटर इलेक्ट्रिसिटी से जो चलती है वो पानी को इस तरीके से कलेक्ट करती है कि जब वो चल रही होती है पानी हमारा एक टैंक या किसी भी जगह जाकर कलेक्ट हो जाता है. We also make electricity with the help of water, which is known as hydroelectricity. This is a little extra tip for all of you. Make sure you research about this and find out more facts. What a sad sight. Talking, whistling, and listening to our own echo, we were walking through this mehrab. Sridhar, oh, the breeze feels so cool in this tunnel. Shelja, it was written that soldiers stayed here. Sridhar, see this board, but look what the wall is like. Shelja, oh, think how this wall has seen thousands of years go by. It has seen kings and queens, horses and elephants, war and peace, but we have spoiled it in just a few years. Kalyani, I don't understand what kind of fun do people get in writing their names all over the place like this. So students, they all talk about the different architectural and infrastructural unit called मेहराब यानी आर्च इन दिस पर्टिकुलर पिक्चर, जहाँ पर वो बात करते हैं कि कैसे हम लोगों ने इतने पुराने आर्किटेक्चर को स्पॉइल कर दिया. वेयर एज ये सारे मॉन्यूमेंट्स और फोर्ट्स ने क्या क्या विदस्टैंड करा है, वी डोंट इवन नो. अ लॉट ऑफ वॉर्स, डिफरेंट फैमिलीज लिविंग ओवर, एंड दैट इज व्हेन दे रियलाइज कि व्हाई डू पीपल हैव टू राइट देयर नेम्स और इनिशियल्स on any precious historical monument. Students, make sure when you are visiting, you are not doing anything like this. Students, now let us reflect by answering these few questions about what we had learned. Imagine that you are in those days where there was a busy town inside Golconda. Think about the questions given below and discuss. You could even put up a play. This is a very fun activity which you can do with your friends. What is the Sultan doing in the palace? What kind of clothes is he wearing? What dishes are being offered? Why does he seem so worried? And in what language is he talking? Students, let me give you a few hints. There used to be Persian and Sanskrit language very famous at these times. He must have been tensed because of some fight. He could be wearing a lot of pure clothes. Dishes could be maybe some animals or some plant related dish. Use your imagination and fill up the answers. Imagine the rooms in the palace, the beautiful carpets and curtains, the fountains, the sweet smell of roses and chameli. Where is this coming from? This all is coming from the gardens and the garlands of the palace, where fountains and roses and chameli and all of these plantations are there. What are the different kinds of factories you can see? How many people are working there? What are they doing? What are they wearing? How long do you think they work? Students, you can imagine your own factories. For example, you can have factories of clothes, of weapons, of food grains, and much more. You can also decide what types of clothes they would be wearing. I think they would be wearing something like a dhoti. And they were asked to work for full days. So these are a few answers that I have seen according to my imagination, but you can write your own answers. Look there, see how finely those craftsmen are carving the stones using a chisel and a hammer. Can you see the stone dust in the air? Do you think the stone dust would harm them in some way? So students, जैसे हमने देखा, carving was a huge part of their lives. So a chisel and a hammer is used to carve very fine material. Can you see the stone dust in the air? तो बच्चों, जब हम stone dust देखते हैं तो वो स्टोन डस्ट हमारे जो भी ऑर्नामेंट या जो भी हम कार्विंग कर रहे होते हैं उसको बहुत ज़्यादा एंगेज कर देती है इन डस्टी मटेरियल, तो इसलिए हमें उसको दूर रखना चाहिए. Going to the museum. After seeing Golconda, the children also went to a museum in Hyderabad. Many old items are kept there. Many things were found when the place around Golconda was dug, like pots, jewelry, swords, etc. So they also went to this museum in Hyderabad where they saw a lot of antique stuff like pots, jewelry and swords. Let us find out what they talked about. Shelter. Oh, why are these broken pieces of pots kept in the almirah? See that small plate made of bronze? That blue piece seems to be made of ceramic. Didi, it is through all these things that we come to know how people of those times lived, what they used and what things they made. If all these would not have been kept here, how would you know so much about those times? तो वो पूछती है ये टूटा हुआ पॉट भी क्यों रखा हुआ है यहाँ पर, इसे संभाला क्यों हुआ? तो दीदी उन्हें बताती है कि अगर हम उस टाइम की एंटीक चीज़ों को अभी तक प्रिजर्व करके नहीं रखेंगे, चाहे वो टूटे हुए हैं, तो हमें कैसे पता चलेगा कि उस टाइम पर क्या होता था. इसे हम आर्कियोलॉजिकल थिंग्स भी कहते हैं बच्चों, और जहाँ ये स्टोर होती हैं उसे आर्कियोलॉजिकल साइट्स भी कहा जाता है. तो इसी वजह से हमें पता चलता है कि हमारे पास्ट में, हिस्ट्री में क्या हुआ है. Let's write about the following. What kinds of pot have you seen around you? Students, I have seen earthen pots, pots made of copper, brass and bronze. Try to find out from your grandparents about the other kinds of pots and pans they used in their time. Have you ever been to some museum or heard about it? What all things are there in a museum? Students, you can ask around your relatives, your grandparents कि उनके टाइम पर जो पॉट थे कैसे होते थे. आई एम श्योर बच्चों, जब वो छोटे थे तो अर्दन पॉट्स, मिट्टी के मटके बहुत ज़्यादा चलते थे, और सिरामिक, क्ले के भी मटके जिसमें पानी भी ठंडा रहता था, और इससे वो अपने सर पे रख के कैरी भी करते थे. फील फ्री टू आस्क अराउंड एंड राइट योर आंसर्स. इफ यू हैव एवर बीन टू सम म्यूजियम or heard about it, do write about that. Let's survey and write. Is there any old building or monument near your house which people come to see? If yes, name it. I think near my place would be Red Fort. Have you ever gone to see an old monument? Which was that? Did you feel it told you a story? What could you know about those times from it? Students, जैसा कि मैंने आपको बताया, हर म्यूजियम के अंदर कुछ ना कुछ ऐसा प्रिजर्व होता है या मॉन्यूमेंट के पास जो हमें ये बताता है कि पहले के टाइम में लोग कैसे रहते थे. तो राइट अबाउट योर ओन एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ लुकिंग एट अ मॉन्यूमेंट. हाउ ओल्ड वॉज इट? हाउ डिड यू नो? When I went to Red Fort, I felt that the place was very, very, very old because we have seen कि Red Fort जब मुगल्स वहाँ रहते थे तब बनता था. वहाँ का जो रेड सैंडस्टोन है वो भी अब फेड हो गया है, इसलिए मुझे पता चला कि वो बहुत ज़्यादा पुराना है. What was it made of? Red Fort that I saw was made of red sandstone. What color was it? As the name suggests, it was red in color. Were there any special kind of designs on the old building? Draw them in your notebook. You all can do this on your own, students. Who used to live there in the olden days? Mughal emperors and a lot of people who helped them used to live in that Red Fort. What kind of activities took place there? There were light and sound shows, there were animal shows and much more. Do some people still live there? No. The Red Fort that I visited in New Delhi, nobody lived there now. But it was a site and a monument for tourism. Make your own museum. This is a very fun activity, students. Let's look into it. Rajni teaches in a government school in Malappuram district in Kerala. Together with the children of her class, she has collected many old things from all the houses, like old walking sticks, locks, umbrellas, wooden slippers, pots, etc. They also saw what these things look like today. Rajni and the children put up an exhibition which people from the neighborhood came to see. You could also do this. Look at the painting and tell. This painting is 500 years old. It shows Agra fort being reconstructed. What kinds of work are people doing? How many men and women are working? See how they are taking the huge pillar up along the slope. Is it easier to lift a heavy thing straight up or along a slope? Were you able to see the man carrying water in a mashak? Students, this is an example of what you all could do. Rajni, who teaches in a government school in Malappuram district, she collected very many old things from all the houses around her, and this is what she constructed, like old things like walking sticks, logs, umbrellas, and much more. We can also look at the picture which shows that the Agra fort being reconstructed. So students, you can also gather around different pictures, make collages, and make fun museums and monuments for your own. By looking at the picture, can you guess what kind of work are people doing? If I look at it, they are engaged in constructive work. How many men and women are working? Students, you can count that there are more men and less women engaged in this particular physical work. How they are taking the huge pillar up along the slope? So a lot of people are engaged in taking one pillar, which makes it heavy. Are you able to spot the man who's carrying a mashak? Are you able to, students? I think it is not visible in my notebook, in my picture, but you guys will be able to spot it in your books. Feel free to spot it and mark in your books. Students, this is an image of a working site of any monument. I am sure while researching for your collages, your pictures, you will be able to find a lot more pictures and conclusions. What have we learned? Sangeeta thinks it is useless to keep old things in a museum. How would you convince her that it is important to have a museum? Why do you think this chapter is named Tells Stories? This is how we started our chapter, students. तो इसमें हमें ये पता चला that what is the importance of our monuments or museums. As Sangeeta says कि पुरानी चीज़ों को रखने का कोई फ़ायदा ही नहीं है, especially preserving it in a museum. Students, that is very wrong because अगर हम इन चीज़ों को preserve ही नहीं करेंगे तो we will never be able to look out for our history, for our past. By preserving a lot of things in our museum very carefully, we get to know the kind of civilization, lifestyle, work, and all the types of things that people used to do. Type of factories, the type of work, the type of labor, type of palaces, kings, etc. So this is why it is very important for all of us to construct our own museums and realize how important preservation is. That is what we learned in the chapter. Why do you think, students, this chapter is called Tells Stories? It is named so because we looked at so many walls with such different stories. I think every wall that we looked at had a different story to tell. When I looked at my monument, which was Red Fort, it was a different story. Whereas when you must have looked at your own forts, you would have had different stories. तो बच्चों, जब हम किसी भी चीज़, किसी भी मॉन्यूमेंट, किसी भी हिस्टोरिकल आर्कोलॉजिकल साइट को विजिट करते हैं तो हम बहुत सारी चीज़ें देखते हैं. इसीलिए जो वहाँ की वॉल्स होती हैं, जो बड़े बड़े पिलर्स होते हैं, जो भी वो मॉन्यूमेंट को कंस्ट्रक्ट करने में हेल्प करते हैं, उन सब के बारे में कुछ ना कुछ हमें वो मॉन्यूमेंट को क्लोजली विजिट करके पता चलता है. Make sure you make your own museums, you visit your monument sites, you look around and find out so much more that we have learned. Thank you.